Okay, tomatoes have been cloned. Tomatoes have been staked and tied. And I got this gorgeous little guy as a present, plus a bag of already ripened figs. It's the earliest I've ever had a fresh fig. All right, lots to talk about. First off, if I was going to have a sunflower farm, baby squirrel would be hired. This thing is crazy with burying the sunflowers. They're under the deck, they're in the lawn, they're in the beds, they're in the pots. She is squirreling away sunflowers. So now I have to find homes for lots more things. The dinosaur kale and turnips that went to seed are now sprouting like mad in the golden Marconi bed. The asparagus pot was loaded with arugula. Same thing, I've got arugula in these pots because a large plant had gone to seed in one of those pots. We are looking fabulous. I hijacked a little bamboo sprout from a field trip, and I'm going to go collect some. Found that. It's a little ways from here, but I think it's worth the effort. Look at this, people. Look at that beauty. This is the rare dotted mint. It's a very powerful mint. It doesn't produce a whole lot of seed or spread as rapidly as the regular mint, but it is just gorgeous, and the pollinators love it. As soon as they get a little bit more mature, the pollinators are going to be all over it. I have finding more and more basil, of course, so now I'm extending beds, trying to make space for all of the volunteers. Ground cherries, wonderberries. I'm hoping a couple of them are giant Cape gooseberries. Lots of arugula, turnip sprouts, and the cress seed has, the collection has started on that. These are the early Russian emerald apples. Gorgeous. They never go red. They get golden speckles. You might remember those from last year. And I put cloned tomatoes and wildflowers down here. That's the Casa banana. I have them working their way up on the trellis in the other spots, and I'm going to have to get that one over, build a little bridge for it, get it over to the split rail fence. This is going to produce a huge quantity. The Hamburg rooted parsley is going to produce a nice quantity of seed for me. Put some tomatoes right up against that Romanesco broccoli stalk because those seeds are coming off quickly. And I believe these are Marion tomatoes. That's a pink variety, and it's one of the finest textures and flavors. That was my first year with them last year, so we're going to go for that this year. And the Casa banana and that French heirloom cantaloupe is doing well up here. I have some yellowing taking place on some of the squash vines and also the corn. We got an incredible amount of rainfall here in such a short time, over a period of 3-4 days. It was just amazing. Some of the plants got too much water though. So the teff is up. I said I was going to do this last year in the walkway, and I never got around to it. Better late than never. This is a very nutritious, soft, low annual grass. So I did the cast sowing throughout the walkway here and covered it with the straw for the moisture retention. We've got ripe lychees tomatoes coming, and here's the first glimpse of the red scarlet runner bean. Huge vine, Hopefully it'll bloom for a little while longer. And I'm also crazy on overload with the yellow crookneck squash. Pollinators are here on all the vines in full force. And I've already collected today's squash, so we've been eating squash for a number of days. Grilled and quesadillas. This is a volunteer watermelon. Last year I grew the Klondike Blue Stripe, and those guys are popping up everywhere. And if I had known that I was going to get so many of the ground cherry volunteers, I would have never sown a seed. So I'm probably close to 150 plants on the property now. So out back I extended that herb bed a little bit. This Italian squash is a very deep female flower. I had a hard time getting that male flower in there. I wanted to do it even though I have the pollinators. This is my first one, so I wanted to ensure that she got a good pollination. Oddly enough, when squash start producing flowers, usually it's an abundance of the male flowers. My squash plants this year came in producing females, and I took quite a hit with all that rain on the cucumber plants and removed quite a few leaves. They just weren't drying out and started with a fungus. So I did harvest one that was the color change. It's a green cucumber and it started to yellow. It was a pretty substantial size. So hopefully, I'm probably not even going to taste these. Hopefully I'll be able to get enough of the cucumbers to have a good seed stock. I've got quite a few babies that haven't dropped on here. So we'll see how that goes. Now I collected all of the seed pods from the dinosaur kale, and now it's back to the leaf production. This is the second year for it, and the leaves actually taste really well. They're really, it's still a good flavor. It didn't change that much. We got the Texas hummingbird sage in bloom. The beginning of the pinching of all of the basil plants. And here are the domestic blackberries. Now this bush will really fill out over the winter, and next year that will be a great harvest. And plus it'll start sending out the runners over the winter and making more plants. So I cleared this area. I'm going to lightly amend it and plant some herbs and maybe some ground cherries here. Alongside each of these beds, on the outside, I cleared that, and I'm going to do the Louisiana tobacco. Now, I made a decision that if I could get water to it, I am going to tear it up. Flax along the outside here is going in today, and this is all the transplants of the ground cherries up front, and then the arugula went in there, and then way back there are the wonderberries. Good growth on the strawberry spinach. Beautiful blooms on the strawberries, sprawling, and the first of the flowers on the Alibaba watermelon. This Casa banana is starting to climb. So as soon as the Alibabas in the back garden go to flower, then I'll start that sugar lump watermelon. Okay, there's the Casa climbing here. And if you remember from last year and for the beginning of the season, this was a potato bed, and I mistakenly tilled it. And I was watching it, and I didn't see any potato greens coming up. So I went ahead yesterday and reworked it. Didn't amend it at all. I may, just boost these with the compost tea. These are more of the ground cherries. I'm going to have ground cherries everywhere. And like I said, I really love this plant because they are long-lived and heavy producers with no thorns. And I've got broccoli raw volunteers. I'm picking up, seeing more and more tomato volunteers happening in the different beds. And I like to try to leave as much as I can where it is. And sometimes that's just impossible. So later today, that'll be moved. And that cluster back there is either giant Cape gooseberry or more of the ground cherries. Same thing up here. There are literally just ground cherries everywhere, everywhere. All throughout the main garden in the back, I'm spotting them. And I'm doing my best also to go through the weeds. I'm leaving the purslane in. Any sprout that I identify that is either cleavers or lamb's quarters is getting to stay where it is, providing that it's not really close to something that I'm trying to cultivate. Here it is, lamb's quarters. And boy, I wish this stuff was edible, but it's not. This is prolific, and the chickens really like it, and that's the stuff that I call chicken weed. I learned the name from Green Dean last year, but I can't remember it. So it was tilled up, but it still needs to be raked through and amended. This bed has dramatically increased. There's where it was. This is where it is now. I figure that sprinkler head is here. It's watering this area. I may as well maximize it, especially with the number of volunteers I have going on. I'm also taking a little bit of hit with all that moisture on getting an early blight on some of the tomatoes. So I don't mess with any kind of treatment for them. If the plant is a little damaged by it, I go ahead and cut the stems off the infected leaves. If it got hit really bad, I pull the entire plant by the roots. I don't shake the soil. I don't compost the plant. It goes directly into the trash. So here I was saying the yellowing taking place on the squash plants from the overwatering of the rain. Same thing. But it's really not that big of a deal. We're going to be back to our dry spell, and then I get to control the water supply. A lot of the Hopi has been successfully pollinated. I have maturing squash everywhere, and I couldn't be happier with seeing that. That's a great squash. It doesn't store as long over the winter as my squash did up north, but it's still a pretty good store into the fall months. And, if you're lucky enough to have a root cellar or a basement that's really cool, I'm sure you could probably get it to, store into the winter. Up north, I've actually had winter squash that's stored straight through to the spring, just sitting in my dining room because part of the house was enormous, and so some parts of the house weren't heated as much as others. So I kept it in the cool dining room on a tabletop, and boom, they were perfect eating come summer. I'm at my wit's end with getting bit by the fire ants. So I'm back to the diatomaceous, and I really hate to do the boil because it just heats up the house and just seems like an incredible waste of resources to boil the water and try to get rid of them that way. So I'm going to go back to the diatomaceous and disturbing them as much as I can. They are really, really clobbering me this year. Oh, I want to thank everybody for giving me the heads up on the foxglove. Absolutely gorgeous. I did plant it. It just didn't do much last year, so I didn't identify it, and it's still going strong. I did some research on it after I was given the name by quite a few viewers. Thank you guys, you're all great. Every part of this plant is poisonous, can kill livestock and humans quite easily, and it is even poisonous when it's dried. The seeds, roots, stems, leaves, everything. And I read that the leaves and the stem right where it comes up from the plant is the most toxic. But when used properly, it is used to treat heart conditions. Don't think I'll be messing with any of that. The zucchini, Black Beauty zucchini is up. Direxo lemon apple cucumbers are up. Shalou, it is really in the sorghum family, but they call it Egyptian wheat. It's a great bird attractor, quails and whatnot. More ground cherries. And these are more Black Hopi. My little bar fell off and took out my best Oswald eggplant. I did another sowing. I have 4 that made it into the ground, and that's not nearly enough for a good seed stock. Great growth. Lots of cleavers, ground cover on the cantaloupes. Same thing with the entire corn bed, and the cleavers is actually starting to flower, and I'm gonna collect some seed from that. So I'm moving some basil, moving some hummingbird sage, and lots of these guys. Look at that beautiful growth. Here's a weed that I like that I haven't identified. So if anybody knows it, feel free to comment and give me a heads up. Square stem, serrated leaves, growing right across from one another, and it produces these little spikes of purplish blue flowers. Gets quite large, and I've got that in a lot of different places that I've been just letting it go. I like the way it looks, and I wanted to identify it first. There's oh, here it is. This is another weed that I wanted to identify. Looks like a type of wild amaranth. It's got the two-tone leaf on it, and I was gonna let this go because there was so much of it, but then I noticed it has little thorns on it, and I'm not really down with having too many thorny things in the main garden, so I've been trying to pull all these guys. But if you know what it is and it's useful, maybe I'll transplant them and grow them in a small area, contain them, try to contain them anyway. So that's another one. What is it? What? I'm like a toddler. What is it? Can I put it in my mouth? The Vivian's Perilla is wonderful flavor. I really enjoy it, and it's doing well. And that's next to the perpetual spinach that's now about 8 inches tall, doing very, very nicely. My direct sow of the rare Dutch dragon tongue beans are coming up. Fabulous, fabulous tasting bean, and extremely beautiful. And there's the Alibabas. So as soon as I see these little guys push and flower, I'm going to go ahead and do the other one. This is all ground cherry over here, and some tomatoes up against the fence. And still not much growth on the tomatillo. That's a disappointment. And sweet potatoes that didn't do anything last year. There are actually sweet potato vines sprouting everywhere. The leaves are edible. And when you see the dieback of the leaves, then you do your sweet potato dig. And this is in quite a few spots showing nice growth. And it's mixed in with the watermelon. So we'll see how that goes. All right, I think that's about it for the garden update. The Italian edible gourd is doing well. Everything's going pretty good. So I'm going to set this camera down, get back to work, and well, I'll take a walk up front. Teddy Bear is actually Even people that see him when he's out in the yard and they're walking around, they're like, that dog is a teddy bear. I'm like, yeah, that's his name. He's suffering. He doesn't want to come out. Comes out really early and goes out late. But he'll just come to the door and get a whiff of the outside heat, and then he turns around and goes right back in. Bella sure is going to miss him. I'm going to miss him when he goes to his permanent home. If I was more settled, there would be no way that I would let this dog go. Where is that teddy bear? There he is. Hi, Teddy. Alright, friends, thanks for watching, listening to my garden ramble. I'll talk to y'all later. Hope you have a good weekend. Bye.